Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down one of the most fundamental problems there is, something that drives pretty much our entire world. The simple, unavoidable fact that we just can't have everything we want. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had that feeling, that you just don't have enough time or money to do all the things you want to do? Of course you have. We all have. That feeling of being pulled in a million different directions, of having to choose this over that. Well, that's not just some personal frustration. That feeling is the very foundation of the entire field of economics. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with that big fundamental problem. Then we'll look at the tools we have to work with. We'll even visualize the tough choices we have to make, see how different societies organize themselves, meet the key players in the game, and then we'll wrap it up with a tool that you can use in your own life. Okay, let's dive right in. The one core concept, the big idea that everything else in economics is built on, is this word right here, scarcity. When we talk about economics, it's easy to think it's all about money and stock markets. But at its heart, it's really the study of choice. It's about how we, as people, as countries, decide how to use the limited stuff we have to try and satisfy our seemingly unlimited wants and needs. And the stuff we have, our resources, they basically fall into two big buckets. You've got your renewable resources, things like water and forests, which, if we're careful, can be replaced over time. But then you've got the non-renewable ones. Think oil, coal, all the things that power our modern world. Once they're gone, they are gone for good. And that difference is absolutely crucial. Okay, so we've established the problem, scarcity. So what do we have to work with to actually create things? Well, economists call them the factors of production. Just think of these as the four essential ingredients for making anything at all. First, you need land, and that means all natural resources. Then you need labor. That's the human effort, the brain power, and the muscle. You also need capital. Those are the tools, the machines, the buildings. And finally, you need that special spork, right? Enterprise. That's the skill of bringing the other three together to create something valuable. And we can even break that idea of capital down a little more. It's not just about the big machinery in a factory. That's what we call fixed capital. It's also the stuff a business has ready to go, its inventory, which is its working capital. And then there's the really big one we all depend on, social capital. The roads, the schools, the airports, all the shared infrastructure that makes an economy work. And this gives us two really different ways to invest. On one hand, you have capital whitening. That's about scaling up, hiring more people and giving them the same tools. But then there's capital deepening, which is all about making your existing team more productive by giving every single person more or better tools to work with. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because now we get to actually see what scarcity looks like. We're going to visualize the tough choices every economy has to make using a cool tool called the Production Possibility Frontier. Now, Production Possibility Frontier sounds a little intimidating, I know, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just a graph that shows the absolute maximum amount of two different things an economy can create if it's running on all cylinders. It's basically the line between what's possible and what's impossible. So take a look at this. Here's a classic example. We've got two goods, wheat and cotton. That blue curve you see, that's the frontier. Every single point on that line represents a combination of wheat and cotton that this economy could produce if it's using all of its resources perfectly. So here is the crucial point. Because we're on that frontier, to get more of one thing, we have to give up some of the other. And that trade-off, it has a name, opportunity cost. It's the true cost of any decision, not what you pay for it, but the value of the next best thing you couldn't do instead. Let's make this totally concrete. Look at point A on the graph. We're making a bunch of cotton and a bunch of wheat. Now, what if we want to make more cotton? We decide to move to point B. Great, we get an extra 100 tons of cotton. But what did it cost us? Look at the graph. We had to give up 40 tons of wheat. That 40 tons of wheat is the opportunity cost of getting that extra cotton. So if every single society on Earth faces these trade-offs, how do they decide where to be on that curve? I mean, who decides if we should make more wheat or more cotton? Well, that's where different economic systems come into the picture. And you can really boil it down to three main approaches. You have centrally planned economies where the government makes all the big calls. Then on the other end, you have free market economies where those choices are left up to millions of individuals and businesses. And then you have what most countries are today, a mixed economy, which, as you can probably guess, blends parts of both. So inside these different systems, who are the actual decision makers? Who are the players out there on the field, really shaping what happens? Well, you can think of it as four main groups. First, there's you and me, the individual, the consumer, making decisions every day. Then you have businesses, deciding what to make and who to hire. Of course, you've got the government, setting the rules of the game. And finally, you have non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, which often step in to fill the gaps. But here's the rub, right? The goals of these different groups don't always line up. In fact, they're often in direct conflict. As a consumer, you want a higher wage, for sure. But the business you work for, well, it wants to keep those wage costs down to stay competitive. It's this constant push and pull, this tension, that drives so much of what we see in the economy every single day. Okay, we've covered some really big ideas here, from scarcity on a global scale all the way down to how entire countries are organized. So let's bring it all home and connect it back to you with a practical tool that uses this same economic logic. This is basically your own personal production possibility frontier. A cost-benefit analysis is just a structured way of thinking about opportunity cost. Before you make a choice, you actually stop and weigh the pros and the cons, including what you're giving up, to try and make the most rational decision you can. So let's end on this one final thought to really bring it all together. You just spent these last few minutes with us. What was the opportunity cost of doing that? What was the next best thing you could have been doing with your time? Hopefully, the benefit, getting a better handle on the fundamental forces that shape our world, made it a worthwhile choice. Thanks for watching.